I want to again welcome everybody here. Thank you for braving what's shaping up to be somewhat of a blizzard outside. My name is Andrew Vanderput. I'm the Strategy and Engagement Manager for our Poverty Cure initiative here. And again, just want to welcome you here. Thank you for being here. Our speaker for today is Dr. Cruz of Catholic University of America, and she's the director of the economics program there. And you can read her bio and kind of learn more about what she's working on and what she does, but there are some programs and topics that she's doing that I think are really interesting as well that are not listed in the biography. So one thing that she does is work with students to help nonprofits and other organizations really understand and know whether their programs are effective or not, and so that's what we'll be learning about today. But she's helped many organizations along that path. And really, as stewards of what God's given us, it's a very important topic for us to know, are our gifts being effective, or are we just wasting our money? So this is very relevant to all of us, most definitely. In addition to economics, I was asking her, what else does she like to do? And she loves to read everything. She's a lifelong learner, whether it's psychology or history. She's very interested in history of not only the United States, but also developing countries and what are the other what are ways of making an organization or a country strong in their institutional economics. Another thing that's really interesting about Dr. Cruz is that she loves to go on walks and she loves nature, but she made it very explicitly clear that she hates camping. So some nature, but not too much nature. So without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Cruz.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I live in Kalamazoo for 4 years, and I miss everything about it except the snow and the cold weather. So today brought some of those memories to me, especially coming from Ecuador. It's a warm country, so that was an adjustment process for me. But I'm very happy to be here today, and I hope I haven't been to Grand Rapids except once, and it was a very fast trip. So I hope to develop some connections to perhaps come back in the future. This afternoon, I am going to talk about some of my work within a larger context. I hope that by the end of the presentation, it will become clear how this fits in the context of a free and virtuous society. The title describes the idea of the presentation to talk about why a measurement of our efforts to overcome poverty matters. Why, if we are able to contribute to a cause, we should also be able to expect that results are coming from these initiatives. So I read about the mission of the Acton Institute in fostering a free and virtuous society, and this is very much connected to my work and some of my colleagues also at the Department of Economics at the Catholic University of America. We are based in Washington, D.C., especially my colleague, Dr. Sofia Aguirre, whom I work with. Specifically, I wanted to comment to start the presentation looking from the big picture. I do a lot of work in macroeconomics, so in macroeconomics, we're always thinking first the big picture, and then let's go down towards the specifics. So thinking about the big picture for me in this topic means think about principles. What is behind our work? So the first, I have 4 principles in here: natural law, human dignity, solidarity, and subsidiarity, on how they relate in this effort to reduce poverty, to end poverty, and our work and how everything is connected. So I am not an expert on these principles, so I'm going to give my own interpretation of how I see them applying to the idea of overcoming poverty. So natural law brings us to the understanding that certain rights are intrinsic to human nature, and that because we have human reason, we have the capacity to understand what is good and to differentiate from what is evil, and that we can actually act on good behavior, and that good behavior can promote virtue not only by ourselves, but in the way we relate to others. We're able to share those attitudes and those principles, so we are capable of promoting a virtuous society. Connected this to human dignity, the understanding that as human beings, every life is sacred, so that we have also an innate worth, an intrinsic value that nobody can take away from us. Because of this understanding, we also know that society needs to support those who are more vulnerable, and whose dignity can be in danger. And that includes those who are at the beginning or at the end of life, but also people with disabilities and people who may be struggling in life. And a clear case of a struggle comes from poverty. Poverty deprives people of many things. Clearly, it offends or limits their ability to live a dignified life. So poverty can appear from different reasons. From my work around the world, I can tell that in many cases, the poor are the hardest working people you will meet. However, in spite of the many hours they may work, they are unable to provide to their families and to themselves of the basic needs. So clearly we have a problem, and that we cannot be indifferent to it because of the next principle, solidarity. Solidarity is our understanding that we cannot remain insensitive to human suffering, and that we have to step in to help, but not only with financial resources. Sometimes money may be the least needed aspect in a given cause, but in other cases it's very much in need of, but also with our talents and our capacities. So personally, I am trying to help in the quest to decrease poverty with what I have, which is some technical knowledge, some technical ability. That is kind of my little contribution, but all of us have something to contribute to. Through solidarity, we understand that we are going to care about each other and try to help. So I'm quoting the Catechism of the Catholic Church that it says that solidarity is, quote, a direct demand of human and Christian brotherhood, end of quote. So this includes helping those who are near us, but also farther away. So I work a lot in the idea of helping people from other countries who may be struggling, but we are also trying to start a work here in the US because there is also a lot of need, and there are people in the country struggling with poverty. Now, how do we help effectively? For that, the next principle, keep us into perspective, subsidiarity. I'm quoting Pope Pius XI. He says that it is a great evil and disturbance of the right order to assign to a greater and higher association what lesser and subordinate organizations can do. Thus, subsidiarity indicates that solutions can be found at the local level. They do not need to come from above, necessarily from the government, or be imposed on people. In fact, to be sustainable, solutions found at the local level are always preferable. So keeping subsidiarity present is essential to promote proactive behavior. And through my work, we are very much emphasizing the need of proactive behavior. So what is that proactive behavior? By that, I mean the ability of people to remain active and engaged in finding solutions to problems that affect them, that they are going to be the main responsibles of overcoming their problems, that we are not taking away their ability to think, to design, and to execute solutions that are going to solve the problems they face. So how is this connected to, from the principle, from the ideas towards reality? This is information from the Charitable Aid Foundation for 2017. And it shows that half of Americans donated money last year, especially to charity, also giving to church and religious organizations, or by sponsoring someone. And why they donate? They give money because they care about the cause, and also because they want to help those who are less fortunate than themselves. So we can see in action solidarity and the idea of committing yourself to contribute to the decrease of poverty. So what are the main activities that Americans contribute to? 37% are donating to religious organizations. 32% are donating to organizations that are helping the poor. 27% are donating to organizations that are supporting children. Overall, we can say that all of those three areas are in the work of decreasing poverty, because a lot of religious organizations are also working in social activities where they are trying to help those in need. So overall, we see that there is that active solidarity ongoing, the effort of people to help others. Now, my question is, does that really happen? After the money is channeled towards different activities, what is the impact of this? Maybe you have asked yourself if your donations are really helping. On that quest, you are not alone. Not only individuals, but many organizations are asking the same question, which brings me to the point I'm trying to make, that accountability and proper measurement are the key for sustainable development. We have to make sure, first of all, we are measuring. We are understanding the results of our actions. But second, that we are properly measuring. Because if not, then we're also missing part of the point. And we need to bring this understanding that assessment is an essential component of an initiative. Otherwise, we will never be able to extract good lessons and understand what works versus what doesn't work. Not every initiative, in spite of goodwill, actually works. But if we don't measure, we are never able to separate good activities versus activities that are not really providing any results. So in that effort, sometimes we tend to be very mechanical about things, and we forget that at the center of all these efforts is the human person. So we are working for people, we are working with people, and the results we are trying to assess is how people are affected, how their lives are going to be perhaps changed, hopefully in the positive, but if the program is bad, it may be bringing something negative. So this is not the same as a general theoretical analysis. We are working with people, so it's important to understand how the human person is affected. We also need to understand that we are social beings. We are not a separate individual, and our actions are independent of what may happen to others. Because we are social beings, our actions, good or bad, are going to affect others. So in this effort to overcome poverty, if there is a successful initiative that is bringing some changes to the participants, this initiative may be doing more than just affecting the direct participants in the initiative. It may be bringing additional effects, these spillover effects towards other aspects of the community that we also need to understand. Because on the other hand, if we have an initiative that is not working, that negative effect is not affecting only the direct participants, but also is having some negative effects towards other aspects of the community and the society. So in this effort, civil society is key for this process. And by civil society, I mean us, people, not the government per se. How can we contribute? First of all, by advocacy, calling into attention issues that are urgent, issues that matter. So our advocacy is important. Second, by being engaged in problems that affect our communities. Engagement can take many forms. Monetary engagement, but also engagement with our time, with our knowledge, with what we are able to contribute. In the third place, something very important, which is holding governments accountable. How are governments using the revenue from taxes? What plans are they designing to create a framework where poverty can actually be eliminated, where there can be job creation, where there can be a fostering of entrepreneurship? So it is, who can hold the government accountable? Of course, we have a political process, but also us. Calling attention when we see something that is not working. And the last aspect, very important to my work, the promotion of proactive behavior. Again, going back to the principle of subsidiarity, that people can design and can by themselves solutions to the problems they are facing. We cannot take that away from people because then we are losing the opportunity to create that sustainable change. Promoting proactive behavior is important. Now, in this quest to find something that is lasting, that change that will actually eliminate poverty, it is important to understand that poverty, it is not just an economic process. So being able to create an initiative that will increase income, it is not enough because we are social beings. So we have an interaction of social and political process in this environment. So if we want to create something sustainable, we have to consider economic aspects, social aspects, and political aspects, how they interact among each other, either helping the promotion of sustainable development or hindering the promotion of sustainable development. And for that, we need to be truly able to look comprehensively at this process with what we call an integral approach. In this, evaluation is necessary to assess the effectiveness of programs that are trying to eliminate poverty, that are trying to promote this lasting change. I'm quoting a very well-known economist that he says, be suspicious of claims to ex-ante knowledge about what works and what doesn't work. What is required instead is recognition of the contextual nature of policy solutions. We don't know in advance if an idea and a program we may design is effectively going to work. Why we don't know in advance? Because we work with people. Poverty is a problem that affects people. So people have a change in behavior. We cannot predict that because we design something, it is going to work 100% of the time. People may react in a different way of what we anticipated. So if we don't assess how people are responding to that program, our idea of a good solution may not be, in fact, a good solution and may not bring that change that we are searching for. So this is my little simplification of the understanding. So we have reality where we are having struggles and problems that come from poverty. That's why ideally there are organizations trying to design an intervention, a program that will hopefully change that reality. But how do we know if it is effectively changing that reality? Only when we measure, when we are going to look at the impact that the organization with this initiative may be bringing. And for that, I argue that we need an integral approach to measurement. It has to be proper measurement. Otherwise, we are still missing the point. And through that proper measurement, we are able to understand better the results of an initiative, and then we can improve or increase the impact that a given program may be bringing in that effort to decrease poverty. Overall, keeping in mind that we want to promote what we call agents of change, that proactive behavior. Keeping in mind that our efforts have to be enhancing the ability of people to do things by themselves. In our work, we rarely work with governments because we believe the government has a role in society, but people themselves have to take onto them the task also to promote something that will last. So in this effort, we are bringing this integral approach to measurement. At the moment, unfortunately, there are not many organizations that are assessing or evaluating the results of their initiatives, and that's the first problem. But the second problem is that many of these organizations who are conducting some evaluation have a misunderstanding of the nature of working with people. They are trying to separate and only look at what happens inside the program. For instance, if I am an organization that is working in teaching farmers some techniques about agricultural techniques, I am only going to evaluate if they learn about that, nothing else. And that is the goal of my evaluation. But we argue there is more to it because we are working with people. People don't stop their lives as just being farmers. They go back home, they go to their communities, they relate to others. They may be able to transmit some of that knowledge to others. They may be able to use some of those principles to other activities. So this spillover effect of what happens inside the little bubble of a program extends beyond the life of that program, extends towards other aspects of society, especially connected to the influence of family and community. Again, to the point that this happens because we are human beings, we are social beings, we relate with each other. So in order to have a proper measurement, then we need to consider this social nature. And for that, we need this integral approach. So with this integral approach that I'm working on, we are trying to identify solutions to problems of poverty. Why is that relevant? Because going back to the original point, if we are contributing resources to initiatives we believe are going to help to decrease poverty, we need to know if they are actually working. And if we are able to identify programs, organizations that are doing a good job on that process, we need to disseminate those ideas, that what they are doing is working. At the same time, if we identify that there are activities that may not be fostering that good change, we also need to comment to others who may be thinking on a similar idea that this actually doesn't work. So our effort is not only to help a given organization, a given non-for-profit who may be implementing a program, but also to use that knowledge, that lessons that we are taking from the work from that organization, and to expand the knowledge of others on what works and what doesn't work. And again, we basically work with private organizations and that come either from the private sector or who are non-for-profit. We, in general, don't work with governments, again, because it's our belief that we need the change to come from people rather than just imposed from the government. So in this integral approach, we are considering the following aspects. First, this social nature of participants. Because we are social beings, we need to measure more than just what happens to my life as a participant. My family may be impacted because of my participation in a program. So we need to acknowledge that and incorporate into measurement. My community may be affected because I live in a neighborhood, I live in a community. So if I am changing as a result of an initiative, my community may be positively or negatively impacted as well. So we need to expand the scope of measurement to consider that. Second, we need to measure more than tangible results. Again, going to the farming example. So yes, I'm learning some techniques, but that is not the only effect. Maybe as a result of that, my self-confidence is improving. And that is a key intangible aspect that can make the difference in my ability to further continue as a farmer. And in many cases that is ignored, but we are saying that matters a lot. Intangible aspects sometimes can be more important than tangible aspects in creating the basis for that sustainable development. So we have to measure. It is tough because it's not as evident, or we cannot necessarily put a limit to that, but we have to make an effort to create proper metrics that will capture most of those intangible aspects. And the last aspect of our integral approach, it evaluates more than the usual immediate aspects. Why? We are trying to change or to improve lives. And lives have a larger dimension than immediate results. In that process, we are looking at long-term aspects that are connected to the quality of life of people. As a result of any initiative that is trying to overcome poverty, are people able to live that dignified life? Are they able to connect better with others, with their families, with their communities? Because only then we are promoting actual change. We are creating something that will last. Otherwise, any program may have a life of 3 years. After the funding ends, anything ends. So is that sustainable? No. Is that producing lasting change? No. Perhaps maybe it's even damaging some of the work that was previously done there. So what we do is we kind of compare that's a little methodological issue. We compare people who participate in an initiative, what we call a treatment group, versus people who will qualify, but for some reason are not participating, so we call that a control group. So we are able to see the actual change. If we have two groups of people very much alike, and one is receiving the program and the other not, then what happens to the one receiving the program? And let's see the change, because then we're comparing things that are equal. And that matters a lot, because we can argue we are making a lot of good things, but if we don't compare, we're not truly sure if that is happening. Where do we work? Everywhere. We are missing starting to work in the US. So last year I was commenting to Andrew, we had 2 programs that were going to start here in the US. One was in Ohio, working in assessment of a program that prevents teenage pregnancy and promotes abstinence in high schools in Ohio. And the second one, a program in North Carolina that is trying to help former inmates to start their own businesses, to have entrepreneurial skills that will help them to overcome the difficulties they are facing. Now, the problems we in particular face to start these initiatives is that these 2 programs receive federal funding. And then when we explain that we're trying to look at a larger dimension of the impact of a program, then the state didn't approve the assessment. And they were, I guess, a little scared to know what is happening, so at the end, we didn't do it. But we are hoping that we will be able to soon start with other initiatives. In what topics we work? Many topics, because the needs of poverty are almost infinite. It can be promotion of entrepreneurship, job creation, access to credit, microfinance initiatives. It can also be health, education, capacity building, different aspects. And important for us, we are working with the students, because we believe that we have a moral obligation to help the formation of the future leaders, people who will have that true understanding about promoting lasting change, but also on this idea of a proactive behavior, that they will take onto their own the incentive to try to find permanent solutions to problems. We have a very international student body, and we are very happy that our graduates are going to, some of them have created their own non-for-profits, others are working in different initiatives that are making some impact in the countries they are from, and we also have, of course, students from the US. They engage with us in our efforts to evaluate. So here are some pictures of some of them in the ground. And I think I have 2 minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly tell you about a couple of examples of our work where I have been engaged on. So this project is in the rural areas of Guatemala. It's an initiative on savings, nutrition, and agriculture. This is the area where the program works. As you can see, they have no electrical towers. They have no access to drinking water. They lack everything. So this initiative that we were assessing is trying to teach them a little bit on farming techniques, create some savings groups, and promote an idea of nutritional goods that they can use, how they can have a more nutritional meal. So we came to assess the work of this organization. And what we uncovered is that the savings groups they created were working in isolation from the agricultural and farming techniques. And that is a problem, because if you learn better techniques on how to farm, in principle, perhaps you get higher income. And that should be directly connected to ability to save. But if the program was completely separating that, then there is no linkages towards something that will change the lives of the people. Second thing we uncovered, the programs were only working with women. And that was creating a lot of problems in the families of this community, because they were teaching the women that you don't have to talk to your husbands at all. They are going to take your money, so that does separate your things. And instead of bringing something positive, it was bringing division in the family. The husbands felt excluded, and they were not supportive of the women continuing in these initiatives, and that's a problem. We also find some positive aspects, that the program was able to provide access to clean drinking water, and therefore health problems were decreasing. So as a result of our evaluation, some change was produced. First, the savings group and the farming groups are now jointly designing the content of the programs and also working together. And also, we are happy to report that now men are also part of the savings groups and as well as the farming groups. And that for us is a success story, if we can call that success, in the sense that we are seeing that because they are now working with a more comprehensive view of the people in that society, they are going to be able to promote a lasting change. Okay, I ran out of time, but I have other examples on education in Nigeria. In India, we're working in helping NGOs to improve their ability to operate. The Dominican Republic on primary education. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Cruz. We have about 25 minutes for questions, and there's a mic on this side, and I have the other one. Please raise your hand, and we can field some questions.
You mentioned the importance of intangible aspects. How do you measure the intangibles?
Mm-hmm. So it is challenging measuring intangible aspects. The first thing we do is that we try to identify what those intangible aspects may be for a given project. So when we were talking about self-confidence, we do, because it's an integral approach, we interview people related to the direct participants, so we are able to uncover if this is actually happening. For instance, we will have a direct question that will say, do you feel more confident about your ability to be a farmer after participating in this program? And you may have a range of potential answers. Now, is that truly happening? We need to ask other people that will know you. So, okay, maybe your wife. Does your husband seem more confident on the ability to do something? Maybe on the marketplace. Does the farmer seem more confident in the ability to produce these given aspects of this given product? So altogether, then we kind of map the answers and see if it holds true or not, and to what degree that confidence, self-confidence, seems to be present as a result of the program. It takes longer because it's not as simple or as straightforward as answering how much did you sell last year, but it's necessary. Yes, thank you.
So I very much like the framing you provided.
Thank you.
I'm wondering on the treatment and control groups, though,
Yes.
what the implications are for that. Typically, when we think of a treatment group, it's the people who directly receive the training,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But you're not only trying to measure the results of the training on those specific people, you're trying to determine its impact on their neighborhoods and society.
Yes.
So is treatment group here not just the individuals receiving the trainings, but let's say their village?
Yes.
Where they reside, and then you compare that to another similar village with similar characteristics that do not have anybody receiving the training? Is that what where this is going?
Yes, exactly. So the treatment group will be not just the direct participant, but the family and the community involved in this process. And then for the control group, we have to select a village that will share a similar demographic profile, but that is not nearby, because then otherwise they can also share with them. So geographically distant enough that that process of, that we call it contamination, won't happen, and then we are able to assess that effect. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. You're familiar with the logic evaluation model. And looking at the logic evaluation model, it's looking at impact, and your integral model is also looking at impact. If you're familiar with the logic model, I'm trying to understand the distinction between what you're proposing here with the integral model and then the logic model. And it looks like that social impact piece is distinctive. Can you talk more about the role of social impact in your model?
Yes. So for us, the social aspect is fundamental because we are under the understanding that to produce a lasting change, behavior needs to change. And for that, we need to measure and account for the behavior of the direct participant as well as the people around that participant. So the social aspect is fundamental to us, that understanding of the social nature of people and how we need to incorporate that, as well as the intangible aspects. So ideally, we will measure the effect of a program after it ends, but also a couple of years after, because behavior doesn't change overnight. You need, and maybe you see an immediate effect, but does it last? You need to go back and assess, is that initial change sustaining over time? So then we go back and assess again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I saw that you're a professor at the Catholic University of America.
Yes.
It seems to me that one of the main problems with whenever we're talking about how we're going to help others is our own point of view and our own priorities. Mm-hmm. That seems to be what carries us away from actual measurement. In other words, we look at something and we say, well, our effort is good, and this is a high moral priority for us. Therefore, you know, if anybody goes along with this, it's a success. Do you use your own Catholic view of the world when you're conducting this research and when you're in what you're trying to do? Mm-hmm. Because since we all have our own view, we can't get away from that. It's a gift, actually. Yet, what you're saying is you're trying to assess what is the actual impact, irregardless of what the intention was or what the moral priority was. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering how you see your own point of view that enters in.
Thank you. It's a very good question. Of course, we have our own beliefs, but our effort is trying to provide a service that can be utilized regardless of your own beliefs or your religion, or because we go back to the principle of natural law. As human beings, regardless of, you may be Christian, you may be agnostic, we are capable of understanding what is good versus what is bad. We make mistakes in the process, of course, but we have that intrinsic part in us that will lead us to the search of the truth. Now, in that search of the truth, in practice, what we mostly encounter is resistance on organizations to know the actual effect. They very much prefer to keep in their minds the idea that they are doing a lot of good things than facing the reality that maybe they are actually not achieving those results. And that facing the truth is the toughest part. I I think for all of us in a way as people, right? Are you willing to know what is actually happening? But we are happy to work with organizations who are saying, yes, I want to know reality as it is, good and bad, because if not, we cannot improve. Yes, thank you. Yes.
I recently read in Christianity Today, and I don't remember the author, that some are studying how just giving money helps, and that early results show that it works better in other countries than it does in America. And examples were cited that a family is given $500. Some buy an immediate need like a mattress so they don't have to sleep on the floor, but they actually have families that have set some aside of that original grant for a future emergency. But that the studies are showing in America giving straight money doesn't work as well. Have you been able to assess any measurements on that?
Yes, from our experience, just giving money doesn't work anywhere, really, because it doesn't promote that sustainable change. In fact, it can be damaging because it creates this paternalistic attitude that someone is supposed to give me continuously money, so then I can do what I am supposed to do. So money can, in a way, change. Not in a way, money changes behavior, and sometimes in a negative way. It creates a different and sometimes negative path that people are expected to receive money to do what is good and necessary. So from our work, we don't see much success on giving money directly to people in need, but I want to distinguish what is emergency relief versus what we are trying to do with this permanent change in problems that, like those of poverty, are lasting. Emergency relief, if there is an earthquake, of course you need immediate assistance, right? That's a different thing. But now, if you are living in poverty, you need something that will last. And giving money doesn't solve anything. And we have seen programs that programs have a limited life, 3 years, 5 years. After the program ends, everything collapses because they were just giving money. They didn't produce any actual change that will, after they leave, people will take off, or the government may run out of money. Thank you. Yes.
Being involved in economics, do you use benchmarks in your work? And if you do, where do you get those benchmarks from?
Yes, being involved in economics, we use a lot of benchmarks and a lot of metrics that we are developing ourselves, because a problem within economics is that it has kind of restricted sometimes from seeing reality. And this idea of a social nature is a new thinking into economics. So there is no really accessible things already developed. We are working on developing ourselves. And it's a trial and learning process. It's an effort, but we're working on that. Thank you. Yes.
It sounds to me that your focus. I'm trying to figure out exactly what you do. It sounds like you go to help organizations assess their effectiveness.
Yes.
In the nonprofit world, what percentage of organizations are willing to have their effectiveness evaluated? And do you have enough business?
Yes, that's a very good question. So we don't charge anything, first of all. So it is a good learning experience for our students. For us as professors, it gives us the opportunity to gather information for academic publications, which goes back to the idea that we want to disseminate results. We want to help people understand what works and what doesn't work, so they can use the resources more effectively. Now, we are not that many, so we are 3 full-time faculty, another, specifically in this topic. We have more people in economics, but specifically in this topic, we are 3 full-time faculty, and we have adjuncts, so we can create a team. But I'm happy to say that we have more people knocking in our doors to evaluate them than we are able to take on to that. And we have organizations that are small, others that are large. So to give you an idea, we're working with Catholic Relief Services, which is a large organization. They have projects for about 800 million every year. But we also work with the smaller organizations because we understand the need in small organizations to identify the effectiveness of their programs is even larger. In a way, large organizations can afford to have someone who can provide some of this, but the other organizations cannot. So that service is even more essential. Yes.
Dr. Zuniga, do you have an example of an organization or a program that is actually effective based on your study of them, that's actually working?
Like 100% working? There is no organization where everything is 100% working.
About
because
90%,
reality is more,
90%.
Yeah, because reality is that we face many challenges. And when you go to the ground, and that is the toughness and the bravery of actually going to do something. You know that perhaps you're not going to achieve 100% of good results, but you may have a 90% or something connected to that. So I was commenting earlier to Andrew, we have a program in Guatemala that I am working on. Fully private initiative. This is from the banana producers in Guatemala. They export the bananas, especially here to the US. So the initiative is on HIV prevention, and it may sound completely foreign. What are banana owners or owners of farmers doing in HIV prevention? I mean, they understand the call that because they want to help the workers to be healthier, to have a better outcome in their families. There are spaces where they can provide some initiative. And there was an initiative from USAID on promoting this kind of HIV prevention, but it's very much agenda-driven and with some ideology that doesn't fit the culture of the country, doesn't fit the workers, and they didn't want to take that. So they decided they themselves, as this association of farmers, were going to design their initiative, where they are going to provide this understanding of human nature and what is a proper understanding of human sexuality to the workers, so they could improve the way they relate to each other, and then they could create some solutions that would last. So this is a very successful story. I could say close to 90% of what they did, it's working. There was an idea that needed to work on the part of finding opportunities for workers to engage in healthy aspects that didn't exist. But as a result of our participation, we came up with an idea of a soccer tournament. Because soccer is very popular in the country, so what can be a better solution to keep people engaged in a healthy manner? A soccer tournament. And it became very popular, and it is the second year that they are running the tournament. So we try to contribute with our assessment to hopefully help them improve at whatever level they are. Maybe they are uncovering that they are only at the 30% level, even more reason to come and do something. If you are almost at 100%, you still have a little bit of space to go there. Thank you.
Just kind of dovetailing off that question, do you guys endorse any of those moderately effective nonprofits?
We don't, because we are a university and professors, we don't particularly endorse anyone. We provide a report with all of our findings, and if they want to use, we know some of those organizations are actually providing copies of the report to the donors, so the donors are aware of the true effect of their work. So, but per se, we don't endorse in itself. I mean, we have some in our website, and I can give you the link, and others are private because the organization may request that, okay, especially when they don't get good results, they request that, can you please keep this private, and we kind of oblige with that.
I have a piggyback off of that question. In several years ago, Angus Deaton won the Nobel Prize for economics, and in his acceptance speech, he mentioned, almost as an aside, that the reports they receive from the people on the ground and the reports that go back to the funding agency they noticed were commonly that there was dissonance between what actually happened on the ground and reports that go back to the funding agency. Have you noticed any of that dissonance at all?
Because we don't face the donors, we face the organization. So we know of some organizations that are providing that same report to the donors, but I mean, anecdotal evidence tells us that in some cases they kind of may not necessarily give those results because they want to show their work in a better light. So it happens a lot. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
So you mentioned that there's several professors that are working together, and they're Catholic University faculty. So presumably you have some shared moral foundations and the principles similar to what you mentioned at the outset. Have you seen this sort of approach work in other university settings across disciplines? It's difficult to get academics to play nice with each other unless you have some sort of shared moral and philosophical commitments. Are there any examples where this has worked outside of a religious university?
So, okay, let me comment that we are trying to make this work not necessarily identifiable with being Catholic, because this shouldn't be. And this is a need, and it doesn't matter if we are in Catholic university or we may be in a state university in that sense. Now, this is a hot topic, very new, very recent, so there is not much work in other universities, but we are finding that large NGOs in the US are coming up with the questions. How do we properly measure? Even USAID last year held a large conference on the question, are we truly measuring properly the results of initiatives? And then the discussion on the intangible aspects is coming up. So it is kind of starting to engage more people in the process. So we are hoping that, of course, this will take over, because it is not that I personally want to be involved in every initiative, not at all. I mean, as many people who can provide that service, the better, because it is a service at the end of the day, helping to understand the effectiveness of the work so that resources can be used properly. So we are hoping that in the near future there will be more interest. We are clearly seeing the signs from the economic development community, NGOs, the interest. So this is kind of picking up into other universities.
Hi, thank you. Is it your experience that donors are actually concerned about outcomes, that they want to know what the outcomes are, and are they asking for sunset clauses? Like, are they asking to know when the problem is going to be solved, and what their sunset clause looks like?
Yes, in our experience, donors are becoming more savvy about results. They want more hard evidence, not just a nice story about one family or one case for that is being showcased in a report. They want evidence of what is happening to the majority of the people that are impacted by this program. So in our experience, there are many of the organizations we work with, they want to show the donors precisely that evidence from all their work. Timelines, they want to know as well. Okay, if this is not resulting or producing any lasting change, when is it going to produce? And what will take in time of in terms of resources to produce that lasting change? So we are seeing that our work is opening up a dialogue, real open dialogue with people at the organizations and the donors. Let's face the reality and see what it will take to achieve the true results they are trying to get.
So a follow-up to that is, if it's opening up a dialogue between the donors and the organization, is it also opening up a dialogue, or does it include those who are purportedly benefiting from the program itself? And is there a difference if those who are benefiting from the program itself are engaged in the design of the program
So the beneficiaries, right? So our effort is to bring the participants or beneficiaries of the program up front because, again, going back to the proactive behavior, they know the reality. They know much better than the organization the problems they face, and they can tell you the priorities. You may be thinking on A, but they think the priority is B. So we bring them to the conversations. We hold meetings, we do focus groups, and we also do deep interviews with the presence of the beneficiaries and also the organization and sometimes the donor, but for sure people from the organization and the beneficiaries. We are seeing some organizations take that after our evaluation passes, that they are trying to incorporate more the point of view and the ideas from the beneficiaries, another kind of ignoring it a little bit. That is beyond the scope of what we can do. We provided the information. Hopefully they will take that and make changes, but we see some change on that as well.
Please give a round of applause to Dr. Zuniga.
Thank you so much.